Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Hi everyone, this is Stuart Andrew Alexander, back again with another guest who's most certainly an impact maker within his own right. And we're going to find out just why in a few short moments. But first, let's take a moment to introduce him to the show. Now, today's guest is someone who has conducted one-on-one interviews with Presidents Bush and Clinton and was an adjunct media professor for 11 years. He has a master's in communication from Syracuse University and a bachelor's in English from Siena. Additionally, he was chosen as Trainer of the Year in a 20-county region by the Association for Talent Development and Entrepreneur of the Year by the Guilderland Chamber of Commerce. His book, Everyone Can Be a Dynamic Speaker, Yes, I Mean You, is his own personal story from nervous presenter to paid speaker. Furthermore, our esteemed guest, ladies and gentlemen, is a former TV news anchor and dazzling professional speaker who has made hundreds of presentations and media appearances on communication, leadership, and politics. Based out of Albany, New York, his training firm specializes in public speaking, corporate talent development, and media, and he's here today to talk to us about some of the problems, some of the obstacles and misconceptions, and even some of the pitfalls surrounding the people he has the greatest passion around helping to become more interesting, which results in more business and a better life. So with that said, please welcome him to the show, ladies and gentlemen, President of Grimm Business Seminars and Coaching, Mark Grimm. Mark, are you there? Please, welcome to the show.
Great to be with you, Stuart.
It's a pleasure to have you on the show, Mark, and I'm sure it's going to be a show full of great value because I know you've got lots of great information to share with our listeners out there. So without any further ado, let's just set the tone for the remainder of the show. And could you just briefly describe who is your perfect prospect, Mark? Or in other words, who is it that you help?
I would say someone who hires professional speakers, either to train their workforce in a company or someone who's head of an association who hires speakers to come speak at a conference. Anywhere where there's an audience where people want to get the kind of training that's going to make them better at their job or have a more comfortable life, that would be one of my prime prospects.
Okay, so while you're out there working with these kind of people that you've just described then, Mark, what are 2 to 3 common obstacles you find that prevent them from achieving their desired outcome of becoming more interesting and building their business so that they can live a better life?
Well, I think people tend to focus a little bit more on what they care about rather than what their audience cares about. And I'd say that's one of the principal issues, that people say, oh, I have all this and I want to convey all this information, I can't wait. And it's really about focusing on your audience first. What do they want? How can I help them? Focus in on that and then be clear and compelling and visual in doing that. And if you do, you're going to find out people are going to find you a lot more interesting.
Okay, Mark. So in terms of the people that you work with out there, do you ever come across the obstacle of people who don't know actually where to look?
Oh, sure. When they're looking for help, there's a lot of training out there, and sometimes it's hard to determine what place to go, where to look, and there's some training outfits that charge an awful lot of money, and I'm not sure you're getting all the value that you should from those. So it's really, from a standpoint of a consumer, is focusing how you're going to get the most value you can, and have a clear idea of what you want to accomplish. One of the things I like to do with my clients when I first meet with them is describe what success looks like. Paint that picture from your mind. And that's what we're going to work for. That's our goal. You have a pretty clear idea now of what success looks like. And once you have a clear idea of what success looks like, it's a lot easier to obtain it. And it's easier also for the person helping them as a coach or a trainer, and which is what I do. If I have a clear idea of what they really need, then there's a better chance that we're going to achieve that. And one of the things I stress is customization. Some of these big firms are a little too cookie cutter in their approach to training, and I customize my training to my audience, or if it's one-on-one coaching, to my specific client. And I tailor it to exactly what their needs and dreams are, and that generally leads to a lot more success.
When you talk about tailoring your solutions to your clients' needs, do you still come across situations where they, even after you have consulted them and placed all the benefits of working together with you, do you still come across the obstacle of them placing too much emphasis on price rather than the value that you can deliver?
Absolutely. I mean, they say, how much are you going to charge? You get that a lot. You're in business. That's the first thing, how much are you going to charge? And I said, whoa, wait a minute. I need to know what it is you need before I can make that determination. Then I'll come up with a plan to help you. Especially in one-on-one coaching, there's a lot of cheaper prices. People tutor and give you some tips, and that's not what I do. I go well beyond that. And when it comes to public speaking, I want to change the way you approach public speaking for the rest of your life. That's what I offer folks, not a few tips on, what tie you should wear. And that's really, once people come to understand that's more about value than price, then maybe they're a little more interested. But I think anybody who's shopping around for any goods or services, they should really focus on value and not price, because in the end, they want to get the most bang for their buck, and cheapest isn't always the best. And in fact, most often it isn't.
Okay, Mark, you're called into a company to consult. You're called in to help them out. In all the years that you've been working in this profession, what are 2 to 3 popular myths or misconceptions that your prospects may have about achieving their desired outcome?
Any big challenge requires work, and I find that you have to really be committed to the idea. So I try to I may be hired, for example, by a human resource director, but in the end, it's the attendees in my seminar, they're the ones that have to buy into it. And there's some people, they don't like going to training, and I see them there because the guy's sitting in the back with his legs crossed and he's leaning back, and he's not really into that because he's at training because he has to be there. And I try to place it in the context of, how can I help them? And that's really what's important is that training isn't a requirement. It's an opportunity to help yourself. And I try to help them. And you have to get that message across first before you can do anything else, really. So the idea that training is something, it's an obligation for them, really it's a chance to help them. And there isn't anyone who couldn't use training. No matter what you're doing, you can get better. And it's very exciting to be able to achieve more because you've been given the right kind of training, the right kind of path to get there. And when I see that little sparkle go off in my attendee or my client's eyes, it's exciting for me because they come up to me after and say, I can't wait to try this. And I just love that attitude because they want to try it the next day and they have a really good, clear idea of what they need to do. So that's really important, is getting them to buy into it and realizing that they have to work at it themselves and they have to be committed to it. And once they do, then the prospects for a better work performance and a better life.
So, in terms of the mindset of your prospective clients that you're working with, do you ever come across the situation where they think, okay, let's bring Mark in. He's got all of this great experience, and it's just going to work magic, and the improvement is just going to be like instant. It's going to happen instantly. Do you come across that misconception sometimes? Well,
I think at the beginning of the process, you have to kind of be clear about what's going to take place. And I think that's important, is once you've discussed with what they want, you have to be clear about how you're going to make that happen. So if there is misconceptions, that's partly on me because you haven't been clear enough in the beginning as to what the expectations should be. So from someone who delivers these services, I think you have to be really clear about what they will expect. And I think that's really important to realize also that this is an ongoing process. If you're working with them, every meeting I finish with a client, I say, how did the meeting go? I actually put that question to them at the end of the meeting. And I say, what value did you get out of this meeting? I make them tell me in their own words what value they got. And if they're vague or they're not sure, then we miss something. But generally, they're pretty clear about what the value was. And then I say, how are you going to apply that today to your challenge? And then, so I think training has to be very practical. And then if you do those things, then I think you really have gone a long way into minimizing misconceptions.
Okay, Mark, thanks for that. Let's just shift gear and let's talk about the people that you work with who are out there and looking for a speaker. They're looking to hire a speaker for a conference. They need a keynote speaker or for a seminar for their company's training. What are one or two of the biggest pitfalls that they may not be aware of and that you could just shine a spotlight on that to help them avoid those pitfalls?
They may look for someone who's got a lot of knowledge or experience, but unless you got a little pizzazz, so what? I mean, you have to realize that as a speaker, you're an entertainer, and that every speech is a show. And if you're not interesting to view or interesting to hear, it doesn't really matter how much knowledge you have. So I think this idea that every speech is a story is really important. And sometimes people just go with somebody who might have a lot of knowledge. But it's more than that. Speaking is a real skill, and being interesting is a skill. And you really have to work at it. So I work at bringing content that's really important to them and really relevant, but also we present it in an entertaining way, a visual way that engages them, keeps them interested, and it makes it a fun experience and a learning experience. You have to do both. And there aren't that many speakers that are really good at both.
Right, so let's imagine I'm a public speaker who wants to improve on my public speaking skills so that I can become much more interested with the hope of that building my business and increasing the quality of my own life. What are two or three of the most common fears about attempting to actually achieve that you come across there, Mark? Could you just share some of those for us, please?
I think the big fear is you're going to run out of work. I mean, anybody in business knows that you're in the sales business. And I think businesses fail. The principal reason I think businesses fail is not that people aren't good at what they do. They got into business because they're good at X or Y, but they're not very good at selling it. And it doesn't do you any good to be great at something if you're not able to market it. So I think I run into this again and again from events that I go to, and I go to probably over 100 business events a year, that people just feel that they just have to keep up on the sales end. And I think it's really about being clear about what you offer and getting people that you've helped to speak up for you. You know, we refer to this, of course, as referrals, but sometimes you have to push them along, keep top of mind awareness, keep on their minds, and ask them. The best way to get a referral is to constantly ask for referrals. And I think that's once you can do that, I think you're going to be more comfortable.
Okay. Any additional fears that you come across, Mark?
That they can't keep up with the technology and the changing times. That's hard to do because the technology is changing, and you want to keep up to date on that. And this is particularly true of sole proprietors. When you're working alone, you're not in an office. You have to learn to be really resourceful. You can't go down the hall and ask the tech guy, what's the latest, in the technology. You have to make an effort to keep up to date. And I think that's a real challenge for business people is you're so busy doing what you do that sometimes it's hard to keep current. And so that's a challenge, and that's something you have to set some time for to be to educate yourself and to keep current with technology and the latest trends in your industry, because ultimately people want the greatest and the latest.
And what would you say to people out there who hire speakers for conferences who may view working with you as a waste of money? What would you say to those people?
You have to convince them about the value proposition, because I know I've been undercut by people that charge less for speakers, and there's a certain amount, there's a line in which I will not cross, because you have to believe in what you do is valuable, and if you put a low price tag on your services, you're really diminishing what you do. So at the same time, though, you have to have some sense of what the market can afford. So that's a balancing act. What can the market afford, and how much value do you really deliver? And I run into that a lot. People, they really don't realize what a real professional speaker costs, because everybody, you don't need a license to be a professional speaker. And a lot of people just think they're professional speakers because they can get in front of an audience. And professional speaking is a lot more complicated than that. And it is really a refined skill. And oftentimes people aren't quite willing to invest in that. And that's what it is, an investment. A really valuable speaker is worth every penny.
So what will be some of the consequences of bringing in somebody who, is not that professional? Is just, he can't deliver the quality that you just spoke about? What would be some of the consequences of that, Mark?
Well, it's a waste of money. And I like to say I'm a risk-free choice, because when you're hiring a speaker, your kind of neck is on the line for a company or association. The last thing you want to see happen, you bring somebody in, and afterwards you say, "Where did you get that guy from? Where did you get that woman from?" So
Exactly.
That's the biggest fear that speaking hiring, because I've tried to get into their heads too, and they want it to be simple. So when they're looking for a speaker, there's certain things they're looking for, and I post them on my website. One, they want to see video of this person in action. They want to see where has he or she spoken before, and what did they say about them, testimonials, and what are the topics. Those are the things that every person who's hiring a speaker is interested in. So you lay it out there. And what I do is I have what I call a speaking report card. I actually have people rate me 0 to 4 every time I speak. And I keep these evaluations, and then I post them on my website as a report card. This is where Mark spoke. This is what they thought of him, right down to a number. So you can really quantify feedback, so they have some sense of how has this person performed before and what did people think of them. And I think if you ease this stress on people that hire speakers, they appreciate that, and you're more likely to get hired.
So you just mentioned your speaking report card, so I take it that's part of the tools that you use within your system. But what solutions do you have for someone who's actually looking to become that more interesting person so they can attract more business and eventually live a better life? What kind of solutions do you have then, Mark?
Yeah, I think being interesting is, first of all, focus on your audience. The world is full of publishers now. Everybody on Facebook's a publisher. Congratulations. But journalism is a skill, and publishing is a skill. So people have to, if you really want to get read, and we know most of the stuff that's posted now is not read. People skip over. It's like our emails. We zip through them like it's there's a fire. We go through them so fast because we get so many, and so few really have our interest. So this idea of being interesting is a really important topic, because we've all been at parties or mixers, and we got talking to somebody who we just couldn't wait to get away from because they're so boring. And what makes people boring is they talk about things that don't matter to you as the listener. So being interesting begins with your audience. What do they care about? What are they interested in? And can I talk about what's relevant to them in short, concise terms, as opposed to, I've asked people at mixers what they do for a living, and 3.5 minutes later, they're still talking, and I still don't know what they do for a living. So that is focusing the audience and then having passion. I have a radio show and I interview folks, and sometimes I ask guests, would you like to be on a show? And they say, I don't think I'm that interesting. And I say, I haven't met that person who isn't interesting, because we all have certain passions. And if you talk about something you're passionate about, it's amazing how much more interesting it becomes. So that, I think, is focused on the audience and being passionate and keeping it clear and concise. That is the pathway to being more interesting.
So let's go back to that scenario that you just mentioned, Mark, of being at the mixer and you just ask somebody, what is it that they do? Who are they? What is it that they do? Could you just give us a bullet-pointed, step-by-step, what somebody should do in that situation?
Well, yeah, the first thing, if I can, is to find out what you do. In other words, if I know what their interests and challenges are in terms of communication, and I try to steer that when I can, I try to steer that conversation back to them and say, gee, what are your communication challenges? And then they ask me what I do. Well, what I do is help meet the communication challenges that they just articulated. If they're looking for a certain thing, then I say, this is how I would do that. So the more your answer is about them, the more interesting you can be. But I also think people talk too much about titles and duties and services rather than benefits and accomplishments. And I help young people with their resumes all the time. They may be former students or somebody will send me a resume. Can you help me? And I say, well, start out by focusing on what you got done. I don't care what your title was for 2.5 years. I want to know what you did. You were there for 2.5 years. What did you accomplish that matters? So I think you want to talk about stories about accomplishments where somebody similar to the person you're talking with had a problem and you helped fix it and they just loved it. Because in the end, you're kind of painting a picture of how you can help them. So as you're expressing what you can do, you should be focused on them and be very clear and have a little proof, as I like to say. Because I run into business people all the time as, financial planners. I say, oh, my goodness, there's probably 5 of you guys at this mixer. Why should I pick you? And somebody might say, oh, because of my integrity. And I say, oh, stop right there. I never met a financial planner who said, gee, Mark, I'm great with numbers. I'm a little short in the integrity department, but I'm great with numbers. If you don't have integrity, you don't admit it. So it really doesn't have much value. You let other people speak about your integrity, but you really should focus on what you do that is different than everyone else. Why do you stand out? And most people, they can't really answer that question in a clear way, and it's no wonder they don't have more business.
Can we just do a little role play where we're at the mixer and we've just met, and I'm going to reverse the roles, what you mentioned before, and I'm just going to ask you, hey, who are you? What is it that you do? Can we do that for a moment?
Sure.
Yeah, hi, Mark. I wouldn't say your name because I wouldn't know you. I said, hello, how are you?
Oh, it's great to see you. Your name is Stuart?
Yeah, that's right. And your name is Mark, right?
Yeah, it's Mark, Stuart. It's great to see you. What do you do for a living?
Mark, I am a radio talk show host, and I help my prospects and my clients to position themselves as experts within their industry so that the people who are looking or in the market for their products and services have more reasons to choose them once they hear their shows on my station. How about you, Mark? What is it that you do?
That sounds great. First of all, exciting. I mean, people would love to be in the radio industry. And I was wondering, what do you see as your biggest challenges? What do you face every day that you need to overcome, especially communication-wise?
Communication-wise, the challenges that I have is the people who I invite to come onto my show. Most of them want to come onto the show thinking that it's going to be your typical podcast where they're going to be talking about themselves and what they do and their company and their products and services and their lifestyle. And there is a time and place for that. However, the model that I use, and I have to spend a little bit of time to explain that to my guest, is one where I take away that anxiety of them having to come onto the show and talk about themselves. They don't have to come on the show and to try and convince people that they are the expert, because I do that in the introduction to the show, which leaves them, it frees them up to talk about the things that they have a passion around, to talk about the problems that they solve, some of the misconceptions and some of the pitfalls that their target audience can avoid. So those are some of the biggest challenges that I have, is just to switch that mindset before somebody comes onto a show.
Yeah, no, I think that's great, because you recognize that people are nervous about their appearance on the radio, and if you can take some of that anxiety away, they appreciate it. One of the things I've done is I wrote a blog on how to be a good radio guest, and I send it to my guests before they come on the show, and it gives them some tips about how to relax and how to be more interesting, but it also makes the show a better program, because the show hinges on how articulate your guests are, and that's our role, is to kind of make that happen. But I think the more you can prepare the guest, the better able you are to have a stronger program. So I'm glad you're thinking that way.
Mark, great scenario. I actually wanted to put you on the spot, but you flipped it around.
So what I was doing is really listening.
Yeah,
I learned a lot more about what your concerns are, and that enables me to help you if it's possible. What you want to do, of course, is be a good listener and look for an opening. It may be that there's a problem they're dealing with that they haven't been able to resolve, and that's where you can help. And then, so you start out, you're not pitching what you're doing. You're saying, hey, I can help. I've listened. You've got a problem there, and I've got solutions. Are you interested in hearing about how you can be helped? I've never met anyone who said, geez, no, I don't know. I don't want to hear how I can be helped. So really, the quote pitch is about helping people. And, of course, the more you listen, the better able you are to do it. Because we've seen all these canned pitches, Stuart. I'm sure you've at events and somebody says, well, I do this, blah, 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 blah. And then you hear them talking to somebody across the room, and they're giving you the same answer. It's like the same canned pitch. And I don't like these canned pitches at all, because I think the most important thing is to be genuine. Now, you want to have a common theme about what makes you different and special. But if you use the same canned words all the time, you come across as fake or canned, and nobody thinks canned is genuine. So I don't have an automatic press the button 30-second thing. I don't do it that way. I don't think that's genuine, and I don't think that works well.
So you just feel it out then, right?
I listen if I can, or just as I did with you, I got you talking about yourself because I'm interested and I want to hear more. And the more I know about you, the better able I am to offer some ways of helping.
Perfect. I'm sure this is going to be a great resource for anybody out there who's listening to the show. Unfortunately, Mark, we are coming towards the end of the show. So just in case there's somebody out there who's tuning in and they're thinking, this Mark Grimm, he sounds like a pretty cool guy. He's obviously got so much experience. He's got a great online profile. I want to know more. I need some help from him. How would they get in touch with you, Mark? How would they connect with you?
Sure. They go to markgrimm.com, and there's 2 M's in Grimm. And I really lay out how I help people. And it might be just someone who has always wanted to get better at public speaking, but they never took that step. And the first step they should take certainly is to click on my book page. It's a very inexpensive book that I wrote because I used to hide in the men's room when it was my turn to speak. And now I'm a paid speaker. And I figured out what the path is to dynamic speaking. And I want to share it with everybody on the street. I want to stop and I want to share this with them because my life is so much better because I'm a stronger speaker. And there's no reason why that can't happen to everyone who's listening to this program. So I would recommend certainly the book. And then I go into the services, and I do travel all over and come and speak to people. So and there's video and examples of topics. So everything they need to know about what we do is at markgrimm.com.
Excellent. I will ensure that your contact details are on the website alongside your show notes. So unfortunately, we have come to the end of the show, Mark. Do you have any final thoughts that you would like to share with the listeners out there?
Just for people to believe in what they can do. I think we oftentimes just scratch the surface of what we're capable of. And we are capable of so much more. So don't let downer thoughts hold you down. You say, you can't do this, you can't. There's always people around you can tell you can't do something. And sometimes you just got to close it off and say, look, I care about something. I'm committed to it. I have a clear path for getting there. And I'm going to get there. It may take a while, but I'm going to get there. So this idea of making dreams come true, it really is true. But you have to be committed to it. You have to have a clear path. And sometimes you just have to follow your heart. And that's what I hope for everyone, is they follow their heart and they realize their dreams because it's within reach.
That is fantastic advice there, Mark. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day. I know you're a really busy person. It's been a pleasure and an honor. I honestly say it's been an honor having you on the show, having such an esteemed guest to come along and speak about some of the problems and some of the misconceptions and pitfalls, the challenges that you solve for the people you have a passion around helping the most. So with that said, thank you so much, Mark. Goodbye, safe travels, and we will speak very shortly. This was Stuart Andrew Alexander saying goodbye for now. And remember, perfection is not when there is nothing left to add. It's when there's nothing left to take away. Thank you, Mark. Goodbye.
Thank you, Stuart.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.